Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. By L. Frank Baum. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is a modern fairy tale, and the author himself described it as such. Despite the fact that this book was first published more than a century ago, it is still known as a modern fairy tale. When it was first printed, it stood out from other fairy tales like those by the Grimm brothers and Charles Perrault. During the process of writing, the author realized that children needed a story without ghosts, fairies, or other frightening happenings. He intended the book to be a source of delight for the readers, rather than a source of despair. In the book's foreword, he remarked that modern fairy tales are filled with poetry and delight, but they also avoid brutality and despair by following the author's original vision. We'll meet the East and West Wicked Witches in this book, but they're not scary, rather, they're hilarious. The novel features a lot of nice characters such as Dorothy and her friends Cowardly Lion, Scarecrow, Tin Woodman. They exemplify the virtues of fortitude, discernment, and emotional receptivity. There are nice witches and terrible witches among the witches. This novel has a moral lesson, despite the author's desire to entertain children. Everything we appreciate can be found within ourselves if we know how to look for it. Every day, even the tiniest acts of kindness can have a profound effect on the lives of those around us. Aside from that, it's critical to avoid becoming self-centered because only by working together will we be able to discover life's actual meaning. There are 24 chapters in all, and the narrative is fast-paced and engaging. The reader is left breathless and anticipating the next occurrence as each one unfolds one after the other. Dorothy is a youngster that lives with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry in Kansas. She was abandoned at a young age. She resided in a shack on the prairie in a remote location. When a storm came through, everything was ripped to shreds. The girl's aunt and uncle were wonderful and honest people who took good care of her, but they were serious and rarely cracked jokes. Unlike them, Dorothy was unique. She was a cheery young lady who enjoyed spending her free time outside with her dog, Toto. One day as Dorothy was playing, she heard a sound of wind and it raised her house up. She fell asleep because she was reminded of sleeping in a cradle by the rocking motion. She woke up when the house fell again. Sunlight streamed into the room via the window when she opened her eyes. She had no resemblance to Kansas in the surroundings. Everything was vibrantly colored, and she could make out trees and a creek in the distance. It appeared to her that there were 4 adults who were only a few feet tall and clothed in bright colors. They greeted her with a bow and made her feel at home. They informed her that she is now a noble witch in the Munchkin country. When they told her she had killed the Wicked Witch of the East before she arrived, Dorothy was more than astonished. She couldn't believe it when they pointed out the legs peeping out of the house's floorboards. These silver shoes belonged to the witch. A wise old woman named the woman the Witch of North and praised her. They were grateful to her because they believed she was summoned by them to kill the evil witch. Dorothy was still being explained to by the Witch of the North. She explained to her that she was in Oz and that there were both good and wicked witches. The Witch of the South and she both come from the slain witch's blood. Because they were cut off from the rest of the world, there were witches and wizards in that land. For the first time in her life, Dorothy learned of the Great Oz, the strongest of them all who dwelt in Emerald City. As much as Dorothy was looking forward to returning home, the witch couldn't help. Taking a peek inside her hat, Dorothy realized she needed to go to the Great Oz and beg for his help in getting home. Wearing the silver shoes, she explained, is a surefire method to ensure her good fortune. She kissed Dorothy before she left, leaving a shining mark to let everyone know that the Witch of the North is watching over her. Because she was told to, Dorothy followed the yellow brick road to Emerald City with her dog. The scenery was breathtaking, and she came across a slew of munchkins praising her for killing the bad witch. Because she was dressed in a white dress and silver shoes, the Munchkin Boca family took Dorothy in as a powerful sorcerer. For example, he told her that the Munchkin's color of choice is blue, whereas witches is white. Dorothy's journey began the following morning, early in the morning. She'd run out of energy and decided to take a nap in a nearby field. After that, she came across a scarecrow who gave her a wink. Eventually, he began to speak and requested that Dorothy remove him from the stick, as he had grown dissatisfied with his situation while on it. In conversation with him, Dorothy discovered that he does not have a brain, and that he would really prefer to get one in the future. A part of him hoped that Oz might be able to assist him. They decided to go on a road trip together. While Dorothy slept in the small house, the scarecrow guarded her because he didn't require sleep or food to survive. They awoke to the sound of someone pleading for assistance. They came across the Tin Woodman, who was motionless. Because he was unable to move, he requested that they lubricate him. They recounted their adventures in Oz, and the Tin Woodman explained that he lacked a heart due to a curse cast upon him by the Wicked Witch of the West. He decided to go with Dorothy and Scarecrow in the hopes that Oz may help him. They walked through a beautiful forest on their way. They were startled when they heard a loud scream. The Scarecrow, Tin Woodman, and Toto were attacked by a large lion. Although Dorothy was terrified, she was able to stand up for her puppy and slap the lion in retaliation. After she yelled at the lion for a while, he started to get afraid. He acknowledged that he was afraid and that he wished he could be brave. With the hope that he could get some assistance from the land of Oz, he accompanied them to their destination. Scarecrow isn't foolish, Tin Woodman has feelings, and Cowardly Lion wasn't as terrified as they thought he was on the road. To get them all out of the large hole, the lion carried them all on his back. To get to the opposite side, they had to cross a gap that was far too wide. It was obvious that there was a river, so Woodman built a raft for them. Using some sticks, they attempted to cross the river in the raft early the next morning. Scarecrow got trapped on a stick in the middle of the river since the water was unsuitable for travel. They were able to cross the river thanks to Lion's leap into the water, but they had no idea how to retrieve Scarecrow. Eventually, a stork came to their aid and saved the day. Scarecrow was taken to the riverbank by her. They continued their journey, confident that everyone was safe. However, they had to walk through a field of poppies that quickly put them to sleep. They were well aware of the urgency with which they needed to traverse the field, but Dorothy was having difficulty staying awake. After a little while, they fell asleep, and Tin Woodman and Scarecrow carried them away because none of them had an issue with the smell of poppies. Because of the lion's weight, they were unable to hoist him up. Tin Woodman and Scarecrow met a queen while Dorothy was sleeping, and Tin Woodman protected her from a large yellow cat. The Scarecrow enlisted the assistance of the queen in their battle with the lion. Dorothy woke up after she helped them. That she would be there for them if they ever needed it, the queen told them before she left. They resumed their journey after Lion awoke. They arrived at a location that was surrounded by greenhouses. They were welcomed into a residence before sunset and informed by their hosts that they were close to Emerald City. Oz isn't interested in seeing anyone, thus it will be difficult for them to get there. The next morning, they woke up to find a green light signaling their proximity to the Emerald City. In the late afternoon, they arrived at the city's many green walls. To their surprise, they found an open door and dialed the number. The door was answered by a little green man who said he was shocked that someone had come to see Oz in a long time. All of them were given green eyeglasses to protect their eyes from the bright light. He took them on a tour of the city. The Emerald City was prosperous and lush, and its residents were no exception, sporting green skin tones. Oz's palace was a gorgeous structure that they arrived at. Once inside, they were made to wait by a soldier while he announced their arrival to the Oz. When he returned, he informed them that they would be escorted to their rooms by a charming young lady who would meet them one at a time. The first time Oz listened to Dorothy, he just displayed his head. The Wicked Witch of the West must be destroyed, and he promised to assist her in this endeavor. Because she couldn't recall how she had eliminated the first witch, Dorothy was in a desperate situation. When he spoke to Scarecrow the following day, he appeared to be a gorgeous woman disguised as him. Just like he had told Dorothy, that's what he told him. He assigned the identical task to all of them, and they were all dismayed by the prospect of it. They resolved to track out the infamous witch. They were all her slaves in the Winky country. She threatened them with the loss of their freedom and slavery if they crossed the border into her territory. It didn't matter that she only had one eye, because she could see like a telescope. She unleashed a pack of wolves on them as soon as she saw them. With his axe, the woodman aided his companions and killed the wolves. As a result of the witch's rage, Scarecrow sent the crows, but they were all slain by them. In her rage, she unleashed a swarm of bees to sting them. They were all killed by Tin Woodman, who was stabbed by all of them. That was the last straw for them, so she ordered them to bring her the strangers, but Lion's roar scared the Winkies into submission. Using a diamond-encrusted hat, the Wicked Witch summoned the flying monkeys to her aid. He had the authority to call the monkeys 3 times, as the hat's owner. Her third phone call to the company. To help her deal with the Winkies and then to get Oz out of her realm, she called them both times. In the end, they had to put Tin Woodman on some rough rocks to sink him. They removed the Scarecrow's hay and tossed his garments on a nearby tree before leaving. They tied Lion up and sent him to the Wicked Witch's garden. With Dorothy's forehead marked with a kiss sign, they recognized she was being protected by a good witch, who would shield her from harm because the strength of good outweighed the power of evil. They handled her delicately as they made their way to the witch. When she realized what was written on her forehead, she became upset. In her mind, Dorothy was naive and didn't understand what her shoes meant. When she saw the lion, she intended to use him as a horse to pull her carriage. When she got to the lion, he attacked her, so she threatened to stop feeding him unless he complied with her demands. Even though Dorothy was surreptitiously feeding the lion, the witch didn't realize that they were preparing an escape. The witch arranged for Dorothy to trip over a metal pole in the kitchen, resulting in her losing a shoe. The witch seized it after that. Without realizing it, Dorothy doused her with water, despite the fact that water is known to be a powerful witch killer. Small brown spots on the floor began to develop as the witch faded away. The Winkies were informed of their liberation by Dorothy, who phoned a lion. In order to save their friends, they helped Dorothy and the lion. Scarecrow was rebuilt and the Tin Woodman was repaired. They agreed to spend a few days in the castle when they were all there. They were well aware that they would have to return to Oz in order to realize their dreams. They were heartbroken when they had to say farewell to the Winkies, so they offered them gifts. Those people adored Tin Woodman and requested that he return to lead their nations. The diamond headgear was found by Dorothy before they left. Despite the fact that she had no idea what it could do, she took it nevertheless because it was so lovely. The difficulty is that none of them knows how to get back to Oz. In the end, Dorothy contacted the Queen, who had pledged to come to their aid in the future. When the Queen didn't summon the winged monkeys, she was astonished. It took a long time for Dorothy to get back to Emerald City after she'd done that. The King of the Monkeys explained to her how they became slaves to anyone who owned the hat during the flight. When they arrived in Emerald City, they were given a pair of green sunglasses by a soldier, who then presented them to the city's resident green beauty. Then she proceeded to tell Oz that they were returned. In the end, he opened the door to everyone, even though he initially refused. They couldn't find him anywhere, but suddenly they heard someone speaking from the roof. They ran to investigate. Oz informed them that he couldn't be seen by mortals, and that he wanted to postpone his promises to them, as well. The lion roared so loudly that he even startled Toto, who was hiding behind the curtains, when they heard his choice. Behind it stood an elderly man with a wrinkled face and a firm head. Oz the Great had arrived. Little men shuddered in horror as Tin Woodman approached with an axe in his hand. Then he confessed that it was all a lie. He fooled the audience into thinking he was a woman with a large head and a glowing ball of fire. When he landed in a balloon on this continent, he told them, he was declared a wizard. When he arrived in Kansas, he worked with balloons in Ohio, which was close to the border. Out of amusement, Oz allowed people to refer to him as a wizard and instructed them to construct the Emerald City. In the years that followed, he never left this palace again. He was afraid of witches since he couldn't perform magic. His joy at Dorothy's destruction of the first witch was tempered by his regret that he had failed to keep his promise to her. Their worries were solved by the Great Oz. He told Scarecrow that he had put a lot of pins and salt in his head and claimed that it was his brain. The silk heart was inserted into a sliver of the Tin Woodman's finger that he had cut out. He forced Cowardly Lion to swallow a concoction he said was a panacea for lack of courage in him. However, he proposed that Dorothy should leave the same way she arrived, via plane. When Dorothy attempted to get into the balloon, the rope snapped, and Oz took off with the balloon. Before he left, he promised his subjects that until he returned, Scarecrow would control the country. Dorothy was in a bad mood. As the Scarecrow recalled, they could use the winged monkeys' names to communicate. Due to their inability to leave the nation, they were unable to assist them. One of the wisest people she ever met recommended that she seek assistance from none other than Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. Their wishes would never have come true if she hadn't been there, so they teamed up to help her. Many times, they were in danger. A forest with forests that would expel anyone who tried to enter it was the first obstacle they encountered on their journey out. The woodsmen hacked down the trees and helped the explorers traverse the woodland. Afterwards, they found themselves in the land of porcelain, where everyone fled for fear of being broken. A land of swamps and tall grass awaited them next. Lion had a great time. After learning that a huge spider had killed all the animals in the area, they begged Lion to come to their aid. They wanted him to be their king when he killed the spider, which made him feel like an honorary ruler. After helping Dorothy, he agreed to rule their territory. Fine, the rest of the way. The flying monkeys were summoned when they encountered yet another issue and transported them to Glinda. When Dorothy gave her the diamond hat, she promised to make her wish come true because she had already made 3 wishes. Finally, Glinda returned the Scarecrow, Tin Woodman, and the lion to their respective homes. When all was said and done, Glinda returned the Monkey's King's headgear and freed them. As Glinda assured Dorothy, she would be able to return to Kansas quickly. When she hits the heels of her shoes 3 times and jumps up, she'll be ready in no time. Then she grabbed Toto, said her goodbyes, and went for it. Even though she cherished her friendships, she was eager to see her loved ones. In Kansas, her uncle was building a new house, and everyone was happy to welcome her back. Characters: Dorothy, Toto, Cowardly Lion, Tin Woodman, Scarecrow, Oz, Henry. The story's protagonist, Dorothy. Her aunt and uncle in Kansas are taking care of her because she is an orphan. Even though they are always quite serious, it doesn't detract from Dorothy's joy and affection for her house. Her favorite pastime was playing with her dog, Toto, every day. She was a self-sufficient, dependable individual. In addition to taking care of herself, she also fed her dog every day. She always stood out because of her silver shoes, which led many to believe she was a sorcerer, but she remained a normal girl who didn't hold herself in high regard. Many of the people she met along the way had issues, and as a result, they felt insecure. She went out of her way to help anybody she could. Because she desired to return to Kansas, she was able to overcome her apprehensions about her journey. She was also concerned about her aunt and uncle while she was away, as she didn't want to worry them or give the impression that something horrible had occurred to her while she was gone. As a scarecrow, his head was made from an empty hay bag, and the eyes, mouth, and nose were drawn on. He wore a hat with a pointed brim and some hay-filled clothing. His footwear was blue. At the outset of Dorothy's voyage, she encountered him, who was dissatisfied due to his lack of intelligence and the widespread belief that he was a glutton. Crows used to be afraid of him, but after they realized he couldn't move, they stopped being afraid of him. One even told him that if he had a brain, he would be a fine human being. He later pondered a wide range of topics, indicating that he was intelligent but lacking in self-confidence. He was courageous and funny, and he also had a tremendous deal of love for Dorothy in his heart. He rebuffed Oz's efforts to persuade him that knowledge can only be gained via experience. As soon as Oz convinced him he had won, he was ecstatic. Known as the Tin Woodman, this character is shown as an axe-wielding man fashioned out of tin. It seemed as if his legs, head, and arms had been welded to his body. After the Scarecrow, he was the next to accompany Dorothy. Dorothy and Scarecrow did not oil him up for a year before they found him in the woods. He used to be a guy with a heart, but the Wicked Witch changed that, and he was no longer able to love. It's clear that he had a heart because he displayed feelings like joy and sorrow. On top of all of that, he was always willing to stand up for his pals, and he couldn't even kill a bug. As soon as Oz gave him his artificial heart and told him to fall in love again, he was overjoyed. On their journey to the Emerald City, he was the last to join Dorothy and her companions, the Cowardly Lion. At first he startled everyone with his roar, but then he exposed himself out as a coward when Dorothy slapped him defending Toto. He confessed to them that he was once brave but has since turned into a coward. He set out for Oz in an attempt to regain his confidence. In the same way that all the other characters lacked self-confidence, he possessed courage but was unaware of it. He demonstrated this repeatedly when he stood up for the rights of his companions. Because the woodland creatures were so impressed by his bravery, they proclaimed him king. Until Oz gave him the brave potion, no one could convince him otherwise. Everybody thought that the Great Wizard of Oz would grant their dreams when he first appeared, and he certainly did. Nobody knew what he looked like since he was so intimidating. He performed a variety of illusions on everyone, changing his appearance according on the techniques he learned. Toto unintentionally exposed him as the wrinkled old guy he truly is. He ended up in Emerald City by mistake after a balloon landed on top of him. When they saw that, they assumed he was some sort of magician, and he played along with their fantasies. It worried him to death that the witches genuinely possessed powers that were different from his own. Unfortunately, he couldn't fulfill their wishes, but he did his best. In spite of his deceptions, he was not an unsavory person. In his care, he improved the lot of everyone he came into contact with. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.